I mean, it could be Chaz and Dave standing there. They could be just friends in a pub, just hanging out.
It's kind of the most perfect painting.
We stepped into the room with The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein.
It literally takes you back, like you've got to take a step back.
You walk up to the painting and you're still flabbergasted.
It's so grandiose, so monumental, but then you can also go and relish every single detail.
The painter is telling you that you do not see what this painting is really about.
My name is Emma Capron and I'm the Associate Curator for Renaissance Painting at the National Gallery. So this is the portrait of Jean de Dinteville and Georges de Selve, better known as the Ambassadors. It was painted by the German artist Hans Holbein in 1533. Jean de Dinteville came from a prominent French noble family, very close to King Francis I. Georges de Selve was a cleric. He was Bishop of Lavaur in southwest France, and he too was a diplomat.
My name is Dr. Anya Kanubia. I'm a lecturer in history. This is a very important painting because it's of its time. It was created in 1533. This is a time when Europe was going through momentous changes. It's just before England went through Reformation. Henry VIII wanted to marry again. He was already married, but he wanted to marry again. And he wanted to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon. These noblemen had been sent by Francis I, working in the interests of Francis I, and attempting by whatever means to try and keep Henry VIII within the established church, or at least to monitor what activities were taking place in England. Ambassadors in this period of time often doubled as spies.
The relationship between the two men, we don't know much about. What we do know from Jean de Dinteville's letters is that he was quite miserable in England. He does mention in his letter how wonderful it was to have Georges visit him. I think the painting is the most impressive, testament to the nature of their relationship. They clearly were keen to memorialize their friendship in the grandest manner possible.
My name's Alex Lee. I'm an artist and a designer. I was invited to contribute to the Offcut project, which was a collection of artists invited to create screen prints in response to the pandemic. I realised what I wanted to talk about was the distance between people. And as soon as I thought of the ambassadors and just pushing them apart, what that might mean in terms of a simple graphic image. The more I worked on it, the more I got interested in Jean and Georges. Some people think that they're a couple, which just makes it even more interesting if that is true. If one of the most famous paintings in the world is of a same-sex couple, how fantastic is that?
They seem to represent a traditional perspective of the early modern period that is actually quite male, actually quite Eurocentric, and only embodies a part of the early modern period. Because, of course, early modern Europe was populated by a diverse set of peoples. Of course, it included 50% women, but you wouldn't know it necessarily by seeing this image. It also included an ethnically diverse group of people that we also wouldn't necessarily recognise by just looking at images such as this.
I'm Hay Riley. I'm a digital artist, graphic designer and art director. Holbein is an absolute master of faces, right? That genius means we instantly see them as real people. I see two blokes performing a sort of bored, rich nonchalance, slouching, leaning, with all their stuff out on show, like, oh, this rug? Basically, they're posing like these Tudor influencers, right?
The objects that are depicted with such care on the piece of furniture between the two cities do not only speak to their wealth and learning, but also probably are meant to convey a commentary on the turmoil of the time.
I'm Dr. Louise Devoy and I'm Senior Curator of the Royal Observatory. I think Holbein's Ambassadors is probably one of the best known and best loved examples of scientific instruments in paintings. It's a bit like looking into a shop window of astronomy technology from the early 16th century. So on the left, you've got this gorgeous celestial globe with all the stars marked out in gold. In the middle, you've got a whole array of sundials. And then on the far right, you've got this sort of slightly weird disc-shaped instrument called a torquetum. And this is essentially like a calculator. What we're looking at is a really powerful statement about the wealth, the education, and the sophistication of these two men.
There are interestingly slight inaccuracies in the way these objects are either depicted or in the way they're calibrated. Potentially and more compellingly, they're meant to convey the idea that time might be out of joint because the world is going through so many upheavals. This sentiment, this feeling, is actually reinforced if one looks at the other sets of objects that are displayed on the lower shelf.
Hi, my name is Dami, and I'm a young producer at the National Gallery. So on the lute, I believe one of the strings is broken. Obviously talking about the division going on between the Catholic Church and Henry VIII. And then I believe in the maths book as well, I think the subject is division.
All that stuff they got, like medieval gadgets for spies. You could spend a lifetime getting into all these deeper meanings. They're all hinting it with their stuff placed just so.
I'm Andrew Bruce. I'm one of the photographers at the National Gallery. We photographed the ambassadors in super high resolution. The thing about this painting is it's kind of the most perfect painting to see like this. And there are so many details that I'd never fully appreciated. And then suddenly they're like filling the screen in front of me and I'm amazed I never noticed them before. I guess the most obvious of these subtle little details is the crucifix in the top left-hand corner.
I'm Elaine Mechanic and I was a set decorator on Hilary Mantel's TV adaptation of Wolf Hall. I remember being overwhelmed when I discovered all of Holbein's work because they were perfect. They were Henry VIII, they were Thomas More, they were Thomas Cromwell. Particularly the ambassadors, I do remember studying it in tremendous detail. It was like a eureka moment, looking just at how things were crafted, how they were made. The materials that were used, the detail, the fine fur and the tiny gold leaf in the tassels, but the same in the musical instruments and in the scientific instruments. You've got that specific detail that actually is so authentic and so useful.
The most intriguing aspect of this painting is the elongated, strange shape that stretches across the pavement.
I didn't even see everything else, and I was just like, what the hell is that?
You can only make sense of this object, basically, if you go all the way to the right bottom of the picture. And from this perspective, this strange shape reveals itself to be a skull, a symbol of death, therefore.
Tudor special effects. It sits like an unresolved free transform layer in Photoshop, scaring the bejesus out of you. I mean, what other painting actually makes you need to move into the correct position to see the visual effect work? That's power.
My name is Elliot Brown. I was an A-level student. I think it's just amazing that he's just put it in there in this massive painting. I've never seen anything like it in that tradition, so it's quite exciting that it is there. I know in painting there's like this idea of the relationship between obviously the artist who's creating something to be looked at, but then there's the actual person, the viewer, who has to look at it. Holbein is clearly like, he knows what he's doing because he's wired into that relationship and he's playing the game there with the viewer. He's doing more than he has to do. He was just paid to like make someone look cool, and he's doing all these other things.
And these types of distortion using, which meant that you could only make sense of from a particular perspective, were called Anima Forces.
My name is Mauro, and I'm part of the truly artistic collective from Torino, Italy. Graffiti artists who developed to become mural painters. As a collective, we've been working on anamorphic art for the past 12 years. And this all started when, during a summer holiday, we visited the National Gallery. And whilst we were taking in everything, we stepped into the room with The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein. We've never seen anything like that. And we said, wow, we want to do that too. It wasn't just an illusion, per se. It was actually something that carried a message. And that's what struck us. Even if you stand close to these men, if you are at their same, level, you look death in the face, okay? that's where it all started. They're like, that painting was really, really cool. Okay, how do we do that, but like 10 times bigger? Let's tell a story ourselves.
Even now, it's like, when I look at it, sometimes it's like, if I was to do that portrait, what would I put in that? And then, or even look at my Instagram pictures and think, okay, what do I put in my Instagram pictures? Or where do I take my pictures even? This is how they want it to be seen. Like, how do I want to be seen?